Hi, Luis.
Hi Ananda, how are you doing? Nice to see
Good.
you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, evening, morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just give it another 2 more minutes as we traditionally do. Thank you. Okay, good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third and final day of the MAG meeting, our second set of Open Consultations and MAG meeting. Just to start, the usual, the meeting is being recorded and also transcribed. A summary report will be made available next week. This is also being live streamed at YouTube, and also please make sure that your microphone is off at all times unless you are speaking. In order to request a slot to make an intervention, please use the speaking queue. If you're unable to use the speaking queue, you can put your name in the chat, and then somebody from the secretariat will put your name in the speaking queue, and you can easily see where you are in the queue by either looking at it displayed in Zoom, or you can go to the front page of the IGF website. When it's your turn to speak, the chair will call your name. And once she's called your name, could you please state your name and your affiliation or the institution that you work for. Please keep your interventions short because there is a lot of people who want to make interventions and we are trying to keep time. Also, please, could you speak in a measured pace, not too fast, not too slow, so that people can understand you better and the transcribers can also write down what you're saying better. Once you're finished speaking, can you please switch off your microphone? That's so that we don't disturb any other people. The agenda is on the front page and we're following it. There's been, I think, no changes today, I think, but the chair will go through that when she opens the meeting. With that, let me hand over the floor to Henriette Esther-Weston, who is our chair, to start the meeting.
Thank you very much, Shangatai. Henriette here, Henriette Esther-Weston from Johannesburg. Happy to report that it's a bit warmer today. So welcome to all our MAG members. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our captioners and to all our observers. I'm happy to see that some have faded, but we still have quite a few of our loyal observers with us today. Thank you for your commitment and your interest. And thanks to all the MAG members who worked hard on the groups that took place late yesterday or early today, depending on your time zone. So today we don't have any changes to the agenda, and I trust that we will be able to keep time. I don't think we should feel under pressure to produce more decisions other than what we have set for ourselves to decide today. For the first hour and a half of the meeting, and we've allocated quite a substantial amount of time, we want to finalize the discussion on main sessions. So we'll start with the report from the breakout groups, and then we'll have further discussion on that, and then we'll agree on basic concrete next steps for taking main session decisions forward. Then we'll have a break after that, and we really must have this short break today. It's 15 minutes, we could make it shorter, and you could talk about work issues, but I also thought you might want to just reflect on the meeting. I just looked at Shangatai and I noticed he isn't wearing a tie. So I was, one of the things that, we maybe can talk about is what our dress code has been for this virtual meeting. I know that for me, I've actually dressed up, and I hate dressing up, but I have made an effort to dress up for this virtual meeting. And then after the short break, which will be randomly assigned, and we can use it as we want. We can use it for informal social interaction, or we can use it to discuss issues of concern. Then we go into our final plenary, and that will really just be a summation. We'll recap what we've achieved and what we still need to do to plan for a virtual IGF. If you have some more proposals at that time about how to approach the design of a virtual IGF, we can discuss those. But we don't need to make a decision We want to give ourselves a little bit more time to reflect and possibly also to get feedback from the community before we finalize the design. And that is it. We will set the time for our next call. Excuse me. And the Secretariat has prepared a revised timeline for us so that we can look at this timeline visually in front of us to give us a sense of the work ahead. So on that note, I'd like to hand over to the groups to give us their reports. And today, can we start with, yesterday we started with data, so today can we start with trust, please? Trust, not trust, sorry, I'm getting completely confused. Anya, are you with me? You've got the breakout list in front of you. Can I ask you to call the first breakout? Or if you can put it on screen.
Yes, hi, Andrea, everyone. Just give me a second and
Good.
we're putting it on screen. I'll just give it to Lois to share.
While Anya brings the breakout list on screen, did it work for you? Just give some random reactions, just take the mic and talk. Did these breakout groups that were assigned to different time slots, how did that work? Was it successful?
It was really comfortable and it worked well, so that we had a comfortable time.
That's good, Ananda. You had yours this morning, didn't you?
Yeah. It was quarter to 10. So.
And the group from the Americas, how did yours work out?
It's Jutta speaking here. It was a second group where we had the Americans with us. So for them, I think it was quite convenient for Paul and me being late in the evening, about 10 o'clock in the evening. Yes, it went. It went okay.
Hi, I agree with Jutta. It was quite convenient for me as well.
So it was a bit late for the Central European, Central African time people, but good for the rest of you. Okay, thanks very much, Anya, for helping with this. So can we start with group 1? That is the group that was facilitated by Roberto and Timea sent in the report. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good night to everyone. Yes, we were working in the first group. Actually, we also have the help of Taimia that did a very good job putting all the discussion together and reflecting in one document, the document that we sent with you and shared. As you will see, I will go to some of the conclusions that we have in the meeting regarding first to the format and number of sessions. We are keeping below 8, not counting opening and closing sessions for the thematic tracks. Main sessions should be timed between 90 and 120 minutes. Main session should stand out from the program and not outer session and should run in parallel. The MAG should have some responsibility of choosing topic, of approving content and speakers for as well as organizing the main sessions. There was general support in the group that there should be a main session per track. If MAC members can come up with relevant and timely ideas that complement the discussion in workshops and other sessions pertinent to the track, NRIs and DCs should each organize their main session as long as it brings together their views on chosen topics. Some creative ideas, NRIs or DCs could explore press sessions or satellite events over different regions, time zones or interest groups to get input from and build momentum for their session. About the opening and closing session for thematic tracks, this is something interesting that came out from the group. This opening and closing session worked fine together during the last year, and we should keep them, but maybe made some adjustment, organizing particularly the open session, because we could, this time we could ask the people to prepare some, we could prepare some videos, some introductory videos regarding the issues that are going to be discussed in each of the thematic tracks. And that's one of the things that we discussed. The other important thing that we could do about the closing session is that it will work fine again as receiving feedback from the attendees, and also to evaluate the overall sessions that we had during the discussions. And one other thing that we mentioned is that we could take advantage of the functionalities that the Zoom have regarding evaluations, that as we did during the last days. About the main session topics, proposal of having one main session per track was supported, of having these 4 main sessions regarding to each of the tracks. And in case of the data track, the idea that was proposed by the data evaluation group was to converting a workshop to 229 into a main session. While the group agreed this is a good topic to discuss, the majority of those on the call raised concerns about conflicting workshop selection and main session selection process, and advised the workshop be retained as a workshop. But the idea further explored a main session as well, with HL speakers and diversity, ensuring MAG organizers. Another potential idea was mentioned for main session on data that could explore the topic of data protection in emergency situations such as COVID-19. About the environment, the group supported the idea of having a main session for the track and looks forward to discussing a concrete proposals. Because so far we don't have any, the group didn't have identified any particular one. Some noted that the proposal on definite committed actions for connecting and enabling the remaining medium will fit well under this track regarding the inclusion track. And finally, regarding trust, the group supported the idea of having a main session for the track and looks forward to discussing a concrete proposal. Proposals on session and definitive and committed actions for connecting and enabling the next million. The group agreed that the session should be on the program, but noted that MAC members interested in the topic should still be allowed time to review and contribute the session, the policy questions, and speaker selection. About the proposal on the IGF plus related aspects of the UN Sustainable Goals Roadmap for Digital Cooperation, the group agreed there should be plenary session to discuss this with the community instead of formal response from MAC to the secretary about the roadmap. The group noted that the session should also discuss the option paper that is to be released later this summer. About the framework for the internet can help address emerging issues that was presented for ISOC, the group agreed that this is an interesting topic for the IGF, but perhaps this is not the right format. So we are willing to speak, and maybe some other members of MAC could speak and maybe analyze what will be the best approach, the best format for this proposal. The proposal from high-level session on COVID-19 related topic, the group took notes on this proposal, and there was some support for the session on this topic. Group members also noted the synergy between the proposals and supported by the UNDES and the proposal from Dynamic Coalition. About this creative idea, someone in the group expressed support for including 2 or 3 short pre-recorded intervention in about 3 minutes from relevant individuals, usually not attending IGF, answering a specific question to be addressed in the main session as a key starter or sentence setter. That's the report, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Maybe someone of the group would like to perhaps add something else?
I see Nebosha has his hand up, but does anyone else from group one want to say anything? I don't see any hands or anyone. I cannot see the speaker's queue, but I trust that Luis will let me know. I don't see any hands. So thank you very much for that report, group one, and for your work. I have one comment that I wanted to make, but let me hear from Nebosha first.
Hello, it's just one formal remark when it comes to the terminology. Just to not confuse introductory and concluding session with opening and closing session. So I noticed that in this report from group one, they use opening and closing session, which might cause a little bit of confusion without going into details about which session we are talking about. So my suggestion is to keep this terminology, opening and closing session, for really opening and closing of whole IGF, and introductory and concluding session for the sessions that will start and finish thematic tracks. So that's just my small objection, not just for group one, but for all of us for the future reference. Thank you.
Thanks, Nebosha. That's a very useful clarification. So what we are talking about here are not the overall IGF opening and closing sessions. Those ones we'll come to at a later stage. As the UN is in effect the host of the IGF this year, we'll be working with UNDESA and hopefully other UN agencies on organizing that. So that's a helpful clarification. What we are talking about here are the introductory and concluding sessions for the thematic tracks. So thanks for that clarification. Yeah. Thanks for this group. The only thing I wanted to comment on in your report is about the using a workshop as a main session. That's actually happened before. You know, because I mean, firstly, the MAG doesn't have any hard and fast rules. Every MAG develops its own practice and procedure. And you know, and at this year, I think we have a MAG with many long-term, third-term members and new members. So maybe that's why we have the benefit of a lot of practice that has evolved over the 3-year term of those who've been around. But it's happened before that workshops have been co-organized with MAG members to become main sessions. I think what's important is that the workshop organizers understand that they have to work with MAG if their workshop is going to be changed from a workshop to a main session. So, you know, we can listen to the other group reports, but there's nothing in principle to prevent a workshop from being converted to a main session, provided it meets the MAG's criteria and the organizers are willing to work under MAG leadership or, you know, closely with MAG members to take that idea and then organize it as a main session. And in fact, I went to look last night at that workshop proposal. And I'm not sure who proposed it, but it's got very high level speakers. And if I look at the content of that workshop proposal, that data track proposed as a main session, I actually think it's very suited as a main session. And so, I mean, we still have to discuss this and I want to see what the other groups say, but just in principle, I think what is important is that main sessions are organized by MAG members with the leadership of MAG members. But there's nothing, you know, in our history or our practice to prevent us from working with workshop proponents to turn it into a main session. Shangatai, can you just clarify, or you want to add anything on that, just so that we all know what the parameters are?
No, you're quite correct. There's no rules as such. You know, there's no hard and fast rules. Each MAG each year can adjust the operating procedures as they see fit. You know, for the formation of the main sessions. in the past years, we have had non-MAG members, people from the community helping with the main session. So that's quite correct.
Thanks, Shengatai. I think what's really important is that, and I think this is the place that you are coming from, that main sessions are organized by the MAG, and the MAG feel a sense of accountability for the quality of those main sessions. But it's common practice for MAG to work with non-MAG members on organizing main sessions. But let's hear what the other groups have to say. So thanks very much, Group 1. Let's hear from Group 2. That's Paul Rowney and Jutta, working with Ben and Jennifer as rapporteurs. You have the floor.
Hi, it's Jutta speaking here. Jutta Kroll, MAG member in my third year representing civil society. I'm from Germany. I do think I hand directly over to Jen because she has prepared the document and we've working as we said before last evening on that. So Jen, would you like to go ahead, please?
Thank you, Jutta, and thank you, Chair. Jennifer Chung, third year MAG member, private sector, also the co-rapporteur for Group 2. First, I wanted to thank the entire Group 2 for a really fulsome and engaging discussion, especially thanks to Jutta and Paul for their excellent facilitation, and also Ben, of course, for assisting throughout, for preparing the report and being a co-rapporteur. So we started off Group 2 with talking a little bit about the impact of the virtual IGF on the main session scheduling. We thought we had to start with that because we can't really look at numbers without looking at the impact of changing the format from physical to virtual. We discussed that it was probably ideal for us to have 1 a day, but no more than 2 per day. We didn't discuss a concrete number, but this is kind of the guideline that Group 2 rallied around. The format, we wanted to have it standalone, meaning we don't want it to clash with any other sessions, any other open fora, any other workshop sessions and such. The length was also discussed. We had group members who mentioned it was, last year in Berlin, it was good to have a 2-hour session, but others did say that because now we're not looking at a physical meeting, we're looking at a virtual meeting, people's attention span may waver. So our final recommendation would be anywhere from 90 to 120 minutes. So anywhere from 1.5 hours to 2 hours. The time zone we briefly talked about, I think this also depends on the discussion afterwards, but there was some general comments about having it in UTC time zone or the quote unquote backbone time zone that was brought up in the MAG mailing list. So moving on to the second part of the report, the main session topics. We took a presumption that there were 3 of the sessions that were guaranteed a main slot. The first one is the proposal submitted by Roberto and Karim, the definitive committed actions for connecting and enabling the remaining billions. We discussed that it could be viewed as an inclusion main session. I do note that we haven't really concluded like Group 1 that we wanted a main session per track, but I think the conversation around most of our discussions did, lead to general support for this. The second session that we supported was the role of the internet in emergency situations by the NRIs, and we also supported the DC sessions. There is some extra notes here, especially from our DC extraordinaire, Jutta, mentioning that the DCs will be sending their planning document forward to the MAG to discuss further. So we've separated the remaining topics into 3 sections. The first one is general support, the second one is no consensus, and then the last one is no support. For the general support session, we have the digital cooperation proposal. There is support for a main session on the digital cooperation architecture elements. For example, the IGF Plus of the roadmap on digital cooperation. The second general supported main session would be on environment. There was some preliminary discussion to look at it as a standalone, and others also mentioned that they might want broader elements brought in, such as sustainable development. For the workshop 229, changing times for data governance, there was suggestions that, just like we did for the content governance main session from last year, this proposal can be used as inspiration and a basis for a main session to be created and organized by MAG members. There were concerns that this might mean a highly rated workshop will not end up being used in its proposed form. And there was some solutions proposed that the MAG to invite the proposers of 229 to be part of the group that takes responsibility for organizing this main session. Moving on to the no consensus parts, we talked a little bit about the emerging issues ISOC proposal. Group 2 members mentioned that we probably will need further discussion and it would need more focus, and it could be taken up in a different format or modality, or the elements of this proposal could be considered for a MAG-driven emerging issues main session. So part of what we discussed was, in our group, we actually brought up a good suggestion, suggesting that we leave space for an emerging issue main session. But this would probably require us to identify and agree to the topic by late August, because there would be inviting speakers and other logistic items that we have to consider as well. The last part is the no support. Not that we don't support sessions on COVID-19 or the pandemic, but we noted that these have already been identified as topics from the NRIs, the DCs, different workshops, and most likely in the high-level sessions that we heard very briefly from Wyman yesterday. So we don't really support yet another standalone session on COVID-19. On the introductory and concluding sessions, we are hoping that they should be treated as the opening sessions insofar as we don't have this clash with other sessions as well. Since last year, it was really used for people as a capacity building component. We thought this was probably best, and it could even be done in advance of the main IGF. For the concluding session or sessions, we noted that it could form part of the closing plenary or a separate session before the closing plenary to serve as a forum to capture the feedback. On the discussion on opening and closing plenaries, there was a good suggestion that these would probably be organized as webinars, given that we will have quite a large number of participation. But it was also noted that there might be challenges enabling the open mic for comments at the end of plenaries, and this is considered as a very important part, an important instrument for community engagement at the IGF. Luis, if we can scroll down, thank you. We identified some next steps for the planning. Echoing what our chair mentioned yesterday, we did feel that their working groups need to be established for each main session, as was done in previous years, not including the NRI and DC main sessions, because those two groups already are quite advanced in planning, and I'm sure they would be very happy to involve the MAG as well once they have something a little more developed. And another note was that main session working groups should be volunteer-based, with MAG members able to sign up and contribute to one or more of their choices, so that we're not locked in our evaluation groups per se. So that's the report. Yuta, Paul, Ben, and the rest of group 2, please feel free to jump in if I've missed anything. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jennifer, for that report, and to everyone else who were in that group and who helped with that. Does anyone want to add to Jennifer's report? Anyone from that group?
Hi, it's Yuta speaking here. Since I have not seen whether Hannah is with us today, I would like just to repeat that she suggested not only to reduce the main sessions to 1 hour 90 minutes, to 90 minutes. She proposed as well to reduce the duration of all workshop sessions to 60 minutes. I do think that's a point that needs to be kept in mind when we discuss the format of a virtual IGF, whether we can have a consensus on the reduction of duration in this regard. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jutta. I see Hannah is with us. Hannah, did you want to speak to that?
Thanks so much, Henriette, and thanks, Jutta. I didn't want to disrupt at all. I just thought that this was something that a few people have been saying in terms of the ability to keep kind of a concise schedule, and it's not to be able to keep attention sometimes online requires a more concise schedule. So yeah, not to prolong that, but it was just a point that I did want to flag, and I think that it could be considered. I think that Ben was also in support of looking at 90 minutes for main sessions, and I'm very happy to hear other suggestions. If people have seen longer sessions that have managed to remain engaging, that would be good to know, but I personally haven't. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. It's a good point. We need to come back to that. I mean, I've got experiences of longer sessions that have worked very well. The Missions Publiques consultations, for example. But it depends. It depends on how you facilitate them and whether you use breakouts or breaks. But so we definitely need to give this serious thought. We don't have to conclude on that today, but it's good that you've tabled the issue of duration. Nebosha.
Thank you. First, when it comes to the reducing all workshops to 60 minutes, I'm against that, as when we evaluated the workshop proposals, we took in account proposed format, and in evaluating the quality of overall proposal, how the format fitted the content policy issues, and in that sense, we also gave our marks. If we now force some of the proposals to be reduced to 60 minutes, I think it will influence the quality of workshop proposals, and possibly if we knew that the proposed duration was 60 minutes, we would maybe give the smaller marks. When it comes to the main sessions duration, I think it will be mentioned when we come to the group 4. I think that 2 hours is the minimum, as we are already now almost 40 minutes in this discussion, and we are only warming up. Today we had discussion that lasted longer than 1 hour, and we were just simply discussing about the main sessions. So I don't think 90 minutes would work, and I propose that we remain with minimum or, in my opinion, optimum of 2 hours. Thank you.
I'm actually inclined to agree with Nebosha, but I'm the chair. It's not my decision. I just think we shouldn't pressure. People will be under quite a lot of pressure in organizing their sessions as virtual sessions. So I think we should be cautious about putting additional pressure on them to reduce the time, particularly as we have this very exciting opportunity to make the IGF more inclusive. But we'll get to that later. So I don't see any other questions. So shall we go to group 3? That's the group that was facilitated by Juliana, working with Mary Rose. Group 3, are you ready to report? Or did I miss someone? I'm so sorry. And June and Hannah, you've requested the floor. June, please go ahead.
Hello. Thank you, Chair. June Paris, MAG member. I just wanted to add to what Hannah suggested. I'm thinking that, yes, we could reduce the time of the workshops because we're going to be virtual, which means there's less preparation time for speakers to sit down and, you know, get the room ready. So I think we could reduce it by at least 15 minutes.
Thanks, June. Good point. And Hannah, do you want to come back on this?
Thanks so much. Yeah. And thanks, June. That's precisely what I was going to raise, but mainly on the format. So when I was evaluating the format, and I can only speak for myself, I mean, it was bearing in mind that these would be in-person sessions. So I don't think it's unreasonable to reconsider what would be an engaging session online. On the contrary, I think that when you have less time, even as a speaker, you spend more time getting to the point of what you would like to contribute to the discussion. And I think that you know, our sessions are not scripted, but you know, the workshop sessions, presumably you'd be asking the speakers to share the wealth with less protocol, and that's one of the opportunities of having digital sessions. However, as I said, you know, not to prolong, and it's just an idea, and appreciate the.
Thanks, Hannah. Yes, you know, it is a good idea. I think what might also make a difference on this is how we decide to deal with the networking component of the virtual IGF. You know, do we rely on breakout sessions in workshops to create a networking dimension, or do we organize other features that will enable the networking? So I think that might also make a difference. If we have other features that enables, you know, networking, hanging out and meeting in corridors, then we can have very concise workshops. Or if we want to ask workshops to build in little breaks, but we need to, you know, these are the decisions we have to make in the next 2 weeks. So the speaking queue is now empty, and let's go on to group 3 for your report. Juliana and Mary Rose.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you. This is Mary Rose of Yanga, second year in the MAG, representing the private sector and then from the Philippines for the record. So I'll be sharing to you the output of Group 3. And with regards to how we work this, it's really convenient that we are all in Asia Pacific region. So the time zone was really convenient for us. And I think we had a productive discussion about this. So I'll just wait for Secretariat to pull out the document for everyone to see. All right, so we started with discussing about the proposals for the main session, and based from that, we added 2 other additional columns to identify at least which thematic track it belongs. So we identified some of them, and then for convenience, on our remarks, we added another column for our group remarks. So from that, the workshop proposal that was suggested by Roberto and Karim on definitive committed actions for connecting and remaining billions, we support that. And we thought that it belongs to the inclusion track. But we have a general suggestion that the title can be changed to include a business model so that it will be more explicit on what this session is all about. And then for the digital cooperation and digital roadmap session, we also give our support to this main session. And as long as there is an inclusion of the MAG in the panel, so that's a strong recommendation from our group. And then we also discuss a little bit about the recommendation from the ISOC on emerging issues. And the group generally thought that we need more information on this, or if we can provide the proposal, and then later on we can decide if this session is really for the main session or for an open forum. So we did not have a decision on whether we can support this for the main session or not yet. And of course, we have the full support for the NRI main session, and we trust that they do a great job on this as usual. And for the thematic track on data, we know that there's a workshop proposal on number 229, a change in times for data governance. Yes, we support this workshop session to be included in the main session. We just want to have if anybody from the MAG member who are going to coordinate this should communicate well with the workshop proposers and develop the speakers and scope of the session. So if it will be okay for the proposers, then we support this one as part of the main session. And of course, we need one session for the environment track. And although we don't have the proposal for this one yet, but there's a general suggestion from the group to, if they can have a session that would present data on climate change or misinformation, that would be great. That's just some of the suggestions from our group for the environment main session. And then for the trust, yes, we support this one. And we would let the working group for the trust to decide which topic to choose as the main session. And for the GCs, yeah, we believe that they can come up with something to be the focus of the topic in the main session, but we strongly suggest that there will be a coordination, close coordination with the UNDESA and the Secretariat to avoid repetition with the high-level leaders meeting organized by UNDESA. And in terms of the numbers of the main session, we thought that it would not more than 10 main sessions. And we also are wondering if there is any submission from the BPFs for the main session, and it could be added to the list. And in terms of the format and the length, we thought that it should not be more than 2 hours. And I think other groups has also recommended that one. And if you can scroll down for the next part. So we also discussed about, the impact of the virtual IGF on the main session. Again, we see that 2 hours fits for the main session, and the speakers, we don't put any limit to the speakers as long as the organizers, and it will be part of the guideline that the organizers should put an effort on the diversity of the panel as much as possible and as humanly as possible. And for the format, we do not recommend a one format for the main session because it might depend on the platform that the Secretariat will use. If they will use Zoom, then the breakout groups is possible for the main session. So for the next step on main session preparation, we think that we should list the possible themes for the main session and identify the MAG members who would volunteer to organize and facilitate, just like last year. So moving on to the introductory and concluding sessions, we also thought that it can be done same as last year for the introductory, based on thematic tracks, and then the concluding session as a wrap up and a comment for each track. So I think the MAG members should again divide ourselves into based on the thematic tracks for the introductory and concluding sessions. And we also had a discussion on what would be the format of the virtual IGF. If you can scroll down a little bit. So we see that there are advantages for the virtual IGF. Of course, there's no location constraints, and speakers and participants could join from anywhere. And the only constraints that we think is of course, the timing and the time zone. We thought that if we use central time zone, there might be participants that cannot join, especially from Asia. And if possible, there would be a distribution of sessions on 3 time zones, so that at least 3 or 2 sessions for each track. That's an example. And then there are concerns and questions that has been raised that we cannot answer yet. So how many virtual rooms dedicated for each track? Are there any virtual rooms dedicated for each track or main session? And also, what are the social media platforms to be used? And And with regards to security, is there any security team standby to take care of the cybersecurity issues? And the last thing is that this one, we would ask if how's the newcomer session? Is it happening? And we suggest that it would, yes, but there should be a close coordination with the MAG and the secretariats on the plan so that what happened last year will not happen again. And there was a suggestion, if possible, we can ask the internet governance schools or the academies to be the organizers of the newcomers session. So that's from Group 3, and I will pass on to my other team members, Juliana, Sylvia, Yana, if they have to add, there's something they want to add. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thanks a lot for that, Mary Rose. Do you want to add, Juliana, or anyone else?
Thank you. This is Juliana from Indonesia, MAC member, second years from civil society. Actually, I don't have any urgent thing to add, but for the speakers, this is coming on my mind when I preparing the initial reporting, because this is virtual and will be there is some suggestion to limit the speakers, but it is come suggest the group agree there is no need limitation for the speaker as long as the group can have the strong moderator, because the main session need to explore many things, many aspects, so it will be another burden for the organized main session if we put limitation on the speakers. I think it's only that. Thank you, Rose, for the.
Thanks,
Thank
Juliana.
You.
Go ahead. Thanks very much to that group and to Juliana and Mary Rose. Does anyone have any questions for this group? And thanks to this group for going into a little bit more depth about the virtual IGF. We will summarize all of this input as well as the input on virtual IGF that's being shared in the list. So all of this is going to be used and all the discussion as well. If there are no questions for Group 3, can we please have the report from Group 4? That's the group facilitated by Helani, working with Natasha and Chennai as rapporteurs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natasha. I'm coming from Zagreb, and I'm a MAG member for third term. And I would like to thank Helani and Chennai for taking over the role of facilitator and rapporteur for our group. And since Chennai is at the meeting at the moment, I will present conclusions of our group. So for the number of main sessions, we would like to have a clarification of the best practice forums and ISC proposal, and to see whether they impact on the numbers and the scheduling of the program. So we would like to determine the influence of the thematic tracks on the main session. Should we have a main session determined by thematic tracks? In fact, we are in favor of that idea, to have main sessions that would reflect thematic tracks of the program. And the value of those thematic track main sessions would advantage access to interpretation, which would allow for the diversity in participation and provide the overview of the main tracks. And we would propose to design main sessions in a way to enhance the interactivity through breakout groups, which would combine topping and tailing part. And that topping and tailing were meant to support or replace the beginners or newcomer session. and had that breakout part value. We would support for working on asynchronous approach, enabling as much as needed offline approach to following the information that is being done, and we have a tailing sessions to conclude, and has been covered in thematic track. So there's something that I hope Mary will come in afterwards or immediately if she would like to. I think that she emphasized during the discussion that we still need newcomers main session, and that it's important to stay. Concerning topics for the main sessions, as I said, we support having the thematic tracks covered by the main sessions. Concerning Roberto and Karim's proposals, maybe it could be a good candidate for the representing the inclusion track, but of course it should firstly be discussed inside the inclusion group to decide whether this represents the opinion of and the whole track of inclusion. And should it be presented that way as a representative of this track, or consider that as a standalone main session candidate? There we concluded that there is a need for more context on this session and content as well, as it may be focused more on business models and may need to stand alone rather than to link to the emerging issues panel. And we think that for the inclusion group, we need to discuss should there be a broader conversation to decide does this workshop stand alone, or okay, that's something that was covered by the previous part. Concerning the data track, we are in support for this a proposal by the colleagues from Data Track Evaluation Group, as they suggested that the workshop 229 could be candidate for the main session for the data track, but also maybe to draw some insights and questions that design the sessions to be inclusive and draw in other topics as well. Concerning high-level pen and roadmap, we see it as a valuable part for the main sessions, especially 5A and B part of the recommendations. There is a need to look at the content of the emerging session issues, main sessions content, as they may already be included in other main sessions. Okay, we are in support for having a main session for dynamic coalition and NRI as well. And concerning introductory and concluding sessions, we are in support for continuation of these two sessions with some innovations by facilitators in sense of enhancing interaction. And we would advise trying not to have overlap in schedule of main sessions and other important sessions. I think that was the case last year when, and I think it was more about the introductory and concluding sessions, that this overlap should be avoided if possible, because I think someone mentioned that last year we had overlap with the NRI main session and some introductory session. And And breakout discussion can be done on language groupings. So if it's possible, of course, maybe it would enhance the participation. Then concerning opening and closing, of course, UN is in charge for this part. We would support, of course, to keep it as interesting as possible. And if possible, we would appreciate if UN can share the agenda with MAG beforehand. And if possible, of course, that UN Secretary General to appear live and not pre-recorded to address the audience, if possible, of course. And we are in support for continuation of the open mic session and sessions, and maybe organize some kind of call for open mic questions or something like that to involve the audience as much as possible. And concerning next steps for working on main session planning, we think that we should be having as many groups for the preparatory work as there are main sessions accommodated in program, and use the methodology we used previous year. So invite volunteers for facilitators for each main sessions and colleagues who would like to join for further development. And we would stress importance, maybe more than ever before, to have all MAG members involved in facilitations and or moderations of the main sessions. We said at least one, but of course it depends on each MAG member. And also call for volunteers to facilitate each main session preparatory process. With a limit on the number of main sessions, each MAG member can effectively participate in facilitating. And we would we find important to advise all sessions to cover the part on responding to pandemics. So all organizers to consider the pandemic in the way they plan the questions to be covered. I mentioned that before, we're thinking on how to enhance interactivity. So having some open online documents for gathering the input for the community, or pre-recorded questions, input for questions or something like that. And maybe pre-recorded answers if in any way try to enhance this interactivity. And we could not agree on the precise duration of the main sessions, as negotiated and Titi, who were in our group. It was somewhere between 90 and 120 minutes. And this overlap between main sessions and introductory and concluding sessions was mentioned before. So that would be all from my part, and I invite my colleagues to jump in and cover the parts that maybe I missed.
Thanks very much for your report, Natasha. Does anyone else from Natasha's group want to add? Are there any questions for this group? I cannot see the speaker's queue right now. But if you've requested the floor, please just go ahead. And Mary, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman, Chair, for giving me the floor. Natasha mentioned my name if I'm going to speak on opening the newcomer session. No, I was just making a comment that we should separate opening and closing from the topping and telling sessions of the thematic groups. So it wasn't, it has nothing to do with newcomers session. It was just an information that last year we didn't do well on it. And I'm not sure we want to do that this year. Thank you.
I think, Mary, is that the same point Nebosha made earlier, that we need to be clear that opening and closing are sessions that apply to the IGF as a whole, whereas introductory and concluding or topping and tailing applies to a thematic track. Jennifer,
that's right. That's right. It's just what I wanted to clear that.
Yes, I think Mary Nebosha made that point earlier. So I think we all understand the difference, or I hope we all understand the difference. For new MAG members, let me just be very clear. So especially I know some of you haven't been to the Global IGF. There's usually a formal opening session for the whole IGF, and then there's also a closing session. But for the thematic tracks, what the MAG did last year, which worked well, was to organize an introductory session on the theme. So on data, on trust, environment, inclusion, and then also a concluding session on that theme. So that's the difference. So we're not talking about opening and closing off the IGF. We're talking about introduction and conclusion per thematic track. Jennifer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Jennifer Chung, third-year MAG member, private sector. I want to thank Group 4 and also all the groups for presenting the report. I wanted to pick up on one point that I think Group 4 mentioned and the others did not, was regarding the breakout sessions. I think possibly you were mentioning it was for the introductory sessions, that breakout sessions could be done in language groupings. If I recall correctly, I think last year in Berlin, this was done. I unfortunately could not attend them in person, but just to flag that if we do that, assuming we use Zoom and not other platforms, breakout sessions breakout sessions are determined by host. So it will either be random or it will be assigned. And if we were to look at language groupings, we would have to ask attendees to indicate next to their name the language they speak. And then, we look at it that way. So I just wanted to flag this for us, the technical possibilities and logistic possibilities if we are looking to do that. And then also breakout sessions in Zoom are not recorded unless we have the host in that particular breakout room. So I guess this is more for the dedicated group to look at when we're looking at the physical to virtual conversion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that, Jennifer. Anyone else with comments specifically on Group 4's report before we go into a general discussion? I don't see anyone. So thanks very much for the group. These were really rich reports. And we will be summarizing these reports because these reports contain input that we need not just for today, but for the coming weeks. So just to conclude this or take us into our general discussion, we've got a few minutes left, 20 minutes left. Can I ask Sam? Now, firstly, this is a good opportunity for me to thank Samantha Dickinson for having done daily summaries of the open consultation and the MAG meeting. Sam is with us in the room. And she would really, by the way, like feedback from MAG members. If you have found her summaries, the daily summaries, useful, then please tell her. And if you have comment on how they can be done better, please tell her. Personally, I have found them extremely useful. And so thanks very much for that, Sam. Sam, can you just put on screen, or Secretariat, the Google Doc that we've been using to summarize this discussion? I just want to highlight what I see as an emerging consensus, and then where we have further issues to discuss. Thanks. We're just waiting for that document. If you want, should I share it? Oh, it's coming, good. Thanks a lot. If you can just scroll down to where it says AE. AE is right at the bottom where I typed. Thanks. AE's proposed synthesis. A little bit higher up. Thanks. Okay. I'm going to try and I've got some paper notes as well, but just have a look at this. So it seems to me that we have consensus on the idea of one track per theme, although not everyone might have said it in so many words. We have consensus definitely on environment, but generally it seems to me most people feel there should be a track per theme. What should be discussed still is the idea of using workshop 229 as the basis for the data track main session. So that's still, there's not consensus on that. That needs further thought, but groups have made the proposal that that can be done in collaboration with the organizers, but there isn't consensus on that. So I'm just flagging that for further discussion. Then it seemed to me there's consensus that we use Roberto and Karim's proposal as a basis for the inclusion track main session. There's still a need and a desire amongst the MAG to talk more about the content and the framing of that main session, but it seems that there's consensus that we can use that as the basis for the conclusion main session. Then in terms of additional main sessions, I think we have consensus that we need a main session on the roadmap. And then we also have consensus on the NRI main session on post-pandemic context, and on the, on emergency situations, and the dynamic coalition main session on the post-pandemic context. There was a question, which I'm now going to put to the BPF facilitators. Do the BPFs, are there any BPFs who at this point are wanting to propose a main session? Sylvia, I've noted that you've asked for the floor. Can we just hear from the BPFs? Ben, Titi, Maria Paz, Chennai, Carlos.
Hello.
Go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
I think that the BPF on cybersecurity had been expecting to hold a session so that it could discuss its report and invite any feedback and raise visibility of the work done this year. But we hadn't expected that to be a main session. I don't know if that answers your question. I think it would still be helpful to have some kind of session for the BPF, but I don't feel it needs to have the prominence or the additional length of being a main session. Separately, I'm happy to look for ways. I think we talked back in January about how can you better integrate the work of the BPS into the annual meeting, and I'd be happy to look at ways in which it might work to integrate the work or have a representative of the work talk during the introductory session or the trust track, or during a relevant main session, but hadn't considered it being a main session of its own. I hope that answers the question.
Yes.
I'll stop there.
Carlos, go ahead.
Yes,
Thanks, Ben.
thank you. I think that I agree with Ben on this. In the Berlin IGF, we had a good session, which was not a main session, and worked very well. Unless I am mistaken, I don't see a need for BPFs, individual BPFs doing main sessions. So I don't know. I agree with Ben that it might be, but
well, I think by now you would have known. So
yeah, if we do like
yeah.
we did in 2019, it would be fine.
Yeah, so that's fine. And PT?
I have a question, that when you are talking about having a BPF main session, are you talking about having one main session for all BPF? Because I'm quite agree with Ben and Carlos, because we had a good discussion last year. So, and the objective of the BPF is try to collecting input. So for us, I think it's not so needed to have a main session. Also because having a main session, we should have maybe one for all BPF, and the number of main session will increase a lot. So maybe it would be better try to connect more the BPF with the other session that are dealing with the same theme, but not having a main session for the BPF.
Yes, I agree with Titi. Perhaps a main session, which would do a report for each BPF and all the 4 BPFs together. That would be okay, but otherwise, I don't see.
No, I think that this was just a question from some of the breakout groups, and I think you've answered it very clearly. And as Sylvia says, we need to add to our overall count of sessions, 1 per BPF, but these will not be main sessions. So I'm going to give Sylvia and Maria Paz the floor just now, but I just want to give a count. So we've got at the moment, from what I can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 main session ideas on which we have consensus. I think this matches well the ceiling. I think some groups said no more than 8, another group said 10 maximum. So I think this gives us a very reasonable foundation to start with. I think what we need to discuss, so flagging for discussion, data needs a bit of further discussion. It doesn't have to be now, it can happen subsequent to this meeting. The inclusion track, we've got consensus, but we'll discuss the content. The newcomers session, we might want to discuss that a bit more. Good idea, I think, to work with the Dynamic Coalition on Schools on Internet Governance to work on that. You know, and we also need to think about, I'm not sure what the plans are for youth sessions. What I felt there wasn't consensus on is the idea of an emerging issues main session. I think there's consensus that people felt the ISAC proposal at the moment can work better in a different format. But there was one group that suggested maybe there should be an emerging issues main session organized by the MAG. So that's still open for discussion. So I know we had a lot of other input about the virtual IGF, about length of sessions. But what I'd like us to discuss now so that we can actually make a decision are just the number of main sessions and the basic topics of these main sessions. So I'm opening the floor. Maria Paz asked quite a while ago. So Maria Paz, you go first. Sylvia, I assume you've removed yourself. If not, tell me. So we'll have Maria Paz and then Tamea and then Ben.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I'm experiencing technical issues in this end. My electricity just went off, so I'm running in my phone now for keeping connected in the meeting. And my comment is directed to the question that you posed for the VPF. I agree with my colleagues from the other VPFs that the regular plan that we have so far is to have one session for the VPF in which we will address the work of the year and and delve on the conclusion of our findings. But also I want to remind that in the first day of the open consultation was from the community a particular request that there was some specific intent to talk about women and gender issues in general in a more overall way in the IGF. So only want to represent that if in some point the rest of the MAC agree that this could be a relevant topic for one of the remaining slots for main session, from what we heard in the open consultation, there is an appetite from the community to touch on that. Of course, that we need to take care that it's not duplicative with whatever we are discussing in the VPF session, but I think that it's something that it worth to have into consideration as a potential topic for the main session. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. And thanks for pointing out that I forgot about that. So we didn't put that in the summary. So thanks, Maria Paz. And thanks to Sam for capturing that. Yes, we do need to discuss that. So maybe, yeah, we'll come back and just flag that for discussion. Tamea, you have the floor next.
Thank you, Henriette. Hello, everyone. Just to be very brief, as you cautioned that we are talking about the number of sessions and not how to turn the IGF virtual. But I wanted just to make a point that relates to both topics. And especially when we're discussing main sessions for BPFs and others. I want to keep all of us alert to the fact that going virtual also gives us a unique opportunity to preserve some of our work for the future and use this this setting that everything is virtual and that we are hugely moving to video and online content as an opportunity to keep some of this for the future. And I mean here, if we are thinking about BPFs or others reporting back from their yearly work, if we are talking about having newcomer sessions, if we are talking about all this content that is very much already done and then needs to be discussed for Q&A, if we can have something engaging, more colorful, more just viewable, I think that would be very helpful for all of us to then use for future promotion of the IGF and the great work that is being done here. So I would encourage all of you who are part of DCs and ARISE, BPFs, any other sessions where you feel that you want to report back to the community, to all of us to put our heads together and think about how we can do that in a format that can be pre-recorded and put to the community, but also that lives longer than just this year's IGF. The German hosts, I know they put a lot of resources into this last year, and they did very nice promo videos for what the IGF is, how certain processes work, what can be found there. If we can build on that model and think about these things for the future, I think that would be a really interesting idea. And then it would give more time for the individual BPF sessions to really go into discussions and get feedback, but not have to repeat the same thing over again. So I'm just putting that out there in a way to save time away from having sessions for everything in live, and also to preserve our work a little bit.
Thanks, Tamara. It's really, and you make me think that when we're talking about the thematic track, introductory and concluding sessions, maybe we need to think about preparatory sessions rather than introductory sessions. It might even be possible for us to make them a little bit more because the virtual form allows us to be more creative and interactive. So thanks for that. And Ben, you are next.
Thank you. So it's very helpful to have kind of a draft ideas on the screen for us to respond to, and thanks to you and to Sam for that. And so looking at the list of 7 as a preliminary list for discussion, I just wanted to say 2 things. One, a main session about the roadmap, I think, should be focused specifically on recommendations 5A and B about digital cooperation architecture, and hopefully about an IGF Plus as the route forward. There is so much in that roadmap that I don't think it makes sense to try and have a main session that covers AI and connectivity and human rights and et cetera. So I think the particular value and relevance for the IGF is to discuss what the IGF community thinks an IGF Plus could look like and how we get there. So I wanted to narrow that just in case there was an idea that a main session on the roadmap would cover the roadmap as a whole. And my other question maybe or point was that I'm happy to see one main session per track. I think that has consistency with the approach of the program this year. But I also like the idea that people can sign up and volunteer to lead a main session, so that it shouldn't necessarily fall to the coordinators of those 4 tracks to then produce the main session of those 4 tracks. It should be for other members of the MAG to be able to step forward and take on a leadership role. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Ben. Yes, there was consensus I saw from all the groups on how to proceed. Everyone agreed that there should be working groups, and my sense is that most people felt that MAG members should be able to volunteer for working groups and could be in more than one working group. And I don't think we should decide on the facilitators now. We can start the process after this meeting of getting the volunteers on track, and then we can address the issue of who should facilitate them. Any other comments on that? And Ben, by the way, yes, you're absolutely right. We should be more explicit. The main session on the roadmap would not be on the entire roadmap, but on those issues that are particularly relevant to the IGF. Does anybody have any comments on that or reactions to Ben's input on that, or any other requests for the floor?
Nebojša speaking, just briefly. Natasha mentioned that in group 4 we discussed this roadmap, and that we specifically mentioned that it should be about Article 5AB. Those are the most relevant for IGF and IGF Plus. So I think that's in what Ben also wanted to.
It is. And in fact, Sam, if you don't mind, if you can just put that next to main session 5 on the roadmap, just to make a note that we're talking here about the architecture for digital cooperation, not everything. That's recommendation 5A and B. Jutta, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Henriette, for giving me the floor. I just wanted to come back to the question on these sessions for the 4 thematic tracks. I do think it would be very beneficial to have a consistent program that is also where these main sessions are somehow complementary to each other, and also to the workshops and the issues and themes that are addressed in the sessions within the track. So as I said yesterday, I do think it beneficial to encourage MAG members to have a look at those workshop proposals that are now provisionally accepted for the program, in that themes that they have not been assessing in the first place. So just to get, for all MAG members to get a good overview on what these sessions that we've been discussing yesterday are really addressing. Some have a title where you can assume, or maybe I know what it's about. Others have a title where you really need to look into the workshop proposal and description to better understand what it's dealing about. And then I do think if we have that in mind and then decide what these main sessions for the 4 thematic tracks will really address, that would be useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jutta. Can we note that, Secretariat? I mean, to me, it sounds as if you are making that as a proposal for a first activity for the working groups that will be working on on the main sessions, that they need to look at the workshop proposals in that track, for that track.
Yeah,
So
I thought if we can find the time, and I do know that we all are very busy in these days, but still I do think it helps better understand what the whole track is about. If you have a look at first, a look at the proposals that are now suggested to be accepted into the program, so that the main sessions reflect on the workshops reflect on the main sessions, and it comes somehow together. That was my suggestion. Thank you.
thanks very much, Jutta. So to bring this to a close, I'm just checking the agenda. So can I assume here, let me ask you, do we have consensus on these 7 main session proposals? You can use your, those of you that are in Zoom, you can use your yes function in the list of participants, or people can just speak up or use the chat. Sylvia has a hand up. Sylvia, please speak.
Thank you, Henriette. I just wanted to refer to the guidelines because at the risk of sounding as a broken record and noting that you have mentioned that every MAG has, the opportunity to change processes and everything. I think that there was a very thorough effort in the last maybe 3 years to list like what are those requirements. Some of the things that Jutta just said are on the guidelines, like for example that a main session should not take the attention or duplicate, let's say, what a workshop proposal is actually doing. So going back to the list of the sessions under a specific track, it's important to make sure that either those sessions are referenced as part of the document that puts together the proposal. They don't have to be mentioned on the microphone, right? But there are documents and reports that will come out of that. If that's the case, to draw on speakers that were invited for other workshops to bring those issues to a main session if that is appropriate, but really not to repeat or take the thunder, let's say, out of the sessions that were proposed. And there was also an effort to try and respond to the demands from the community and the consistent input that we have received about going into in-depth discussions to make sure that the topics that are chosen for main sessions actually facilitate that opportunity to deep dive into a particular issue of concern for the internet as we live it nowadays. So just to make sure that it's not a very generic overview thing where there is no chances to learn something new, for example, for people that have attended the IGF in previous opportunities, and to use the pre-session report, the format that the Secretariat has also advanced over the years, that the MAG has put some effort into it, to make sure that those mechanisms are used to reach out to the community and know we are not going to talk about everything under the sun. It's this thing that will help us deep dive into the issues that are of concern. It's limited time, and even more so if we cut another half an hour or so, if we end up with not 2 hours, but 90 minutes, for example. If it is a very broad issue, then it will be very difficult to achieve that that demand, that request from the community to give the opportunity to really go in depth into discussions. On the introductory and the in the concluding sessions that we have discussed, I think it might be a good idea from the groups that have the workshop evaluation group, and there is a couple of other groups that work on those documents, to bring some context into this, also to avoid repetition. And when you look at all of those sessions, there is a lot of work ahead. So it's very important that the MAG also realizes the burden for the people that are volunteering for that. And it's important to spread the load and get more actively involved, especially as all of these new demands for a virtual event will mean, for example, to be checking on video interventions and checking on the quality of one thing and the other. And it's not just sending emails and figuring out, oh, we are going to get together 15 minutes earlier, as June mentioned before. So there is a lot more work that will be needed, and it will be good to just make sure that we are all putting our hand up and helping on the road ahead. Thanks.
Thanks, Sylvia. And just so I think clearly we need, the first task is for the 2020 MAG to look at the guidelines developed by the 2019 MAG.
Okay.
And assess whether you want to work with those and where there are changes, and also whether they need to be changed in the light of it being a virtual IGF. So I think that's an activity that the whole MAG needs to do over the next week. So if the Secretariat can perhaps post a writable version of those guidelines so that we can all comment on them and then adopt them for our 2020 work with changes where needed. And then I have a question. Did the same groups last year that prepared the main sessions per track, because they were more or less, did they also prepare the introductory and concluding sessions for the theme? So and I think the configuration might be a little bit different. So my question is, do we need two sets of groups? One group per main session that will prepare that main session. And then do we also need people who will prepare the introductory and concluding sessions for the thematic tracks? Or will the same groups do both main sessions and introductory and concluding sessions? So this is a question to the MAG. Sylvia and Maria Paz, can you respond? First, Maria Paz, then Sylvia.
Yeah, to the question, thank you. This is Maria Paz Canales, for the record, a MAG member from GRULAC Civil Society. Yes, the groups are different, as other colleagues are pointed out in the list, and also the groups are different between the different members. Usually what we have done in the past is like we do a group of volunteers for organizing each specific thematic session. Last year we self-identified during the open consultation meeting in Berlin, which was one of the main sessions we will be interested to support in the organization. And in the case of the topping and tailing, or introductory and concluding session, we identify later. In general, what has been natural is that someone from the thematic track lead the organization of those, because those are linked with the thematic tracks. But it's, as has been mentioned in some of the report, it's very intensive labor, the organization of the introductory and concluding session. If we consider the breakout groups, we need more members, to be more MAG members to be engaged, or recruit additional support from some of the organizers or other organizations outside the MAG IGF. So, but those are all different groups at the end. It's the same, exactly the same group.
Thanks very much for confirming that, and thanks to everyone, June, Timea, and everyone who responded in the chat. So we need to, as a next step, convene two sets of working groups. one to work on main sessions and one to work on concluding and introductory sessions for the 4 tracks. Ben, you have the floor.
Thank you. So yeah, that was pretty much what I was going to say. For the tracks, in January, thematic working groups were set up that people could contribute to the development of the narratives. So those were self-selecting, and MAG members could be in more than one. And some MAG members, I guess, weren't in any. And then this last month, we've had the evaluation groups for each track, which were not self-selecting, and each MAG member was involved in one and only one. So we could revert back to the thematic working. There are two, so each track has 2 different mailing lists, and we could choose one or the other. What is helpful is that the facilitators for each of those tracks are the same, whether it's the groups back in January or the ones from the last month. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for that, Ben. We just before we close, we're running a little bit late, but one of our observers has a proposal for how to approach the newcomers session. So Mary, can you take the floor, please, and just make your proposal that you made in the chat so that everyone can hear it.
Yes, thank you a lot, Henriette. Hello, dear colleagues. On behalf of the Youth Coalition on Internet Governance Dynamic Coalition, I would like to make this proposal of hosting the newcomer session ourselves and in collaboration with other youth organizations and maybe other DCs interested in making this session happen. We believe that the YCIG community has already enough experience of expertise, and we are youth, and we would like to have this chance to guide the newcomers with their first steps in the ecosystem. And as this year IGF is going to be online, we believe that this can be not only in the form of one session, but it can be organized in a format of several sessions prior to IGF, so that everyone is already informed about what IGF is and how they can get more involved, so it is not so overwhelming for people coming to the IGF for the first time. And also we are in contact with the Secretariat and the host country with regards to the youth track, the fate of which is unknown at the moment, but we have a meeting scheduled with them for next week, and hopefully we can combine maybe the newcomer session with the youth track and make this happen. So this was my proposal. Thank you a lot for giving me the floor.
Thanks very much for that, Mary. So we have 2 proposals for the newcomers session. One suggestion that it's organized by the schools on internet governance, and another that it's organized by the youth coalition. So it's time for a break. I think we just need a short little break before we conclude our meeting. I think I'd like you to, you'll break randomly, but I think what would be useful in the breaks is if people can just confirm what we have got consensus on. So please discuss this idea of the main sessions, the 7 that we have on the table. And if there's any other types of main sessions, we've got consensus also that we need a newcomer session, and maybe you can discuss that a little bit, how you think we should approach the newcomers session. So you're probably more in the mood for a work-oriented break than a social break, but if anybody wants to have social interaction in the break, that's fine. But I think what would be very useful for me is if the breakout groups can just consolidate, that we have a common understanding of what our decision is on main sessions and on what our next steps are. And then we can come back and agree on that. So Luis, please break us into our groups for 15 minutes.
Sure, thank you, Henriette will do.
Thanks a lot. See you all again soon.
interesting observation when we are in a breakout groups, in a small groups, like so many people activate their cameras. Now we're back and everyone on the camera.
Yes,
And
I'm hiding again.
My breakout was cut in the middle of my very momentous and important speech.
But we caught the main point, Carlos. Great ideas.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Carlos, you can finish your speech now.
Yeah, no, it's okay, fine. See, if Yania got it, it's okay.
We like to learn from you, Carlos.
So welcome back, everyone. Did you have good groups?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Very good. Very
Always.
Very good. It was really interesting.
In our group, some of us said that all our breakout groups have been good. And that can only mean one thing, that everyone in this meeting is a very interesting person to interact with, because you can never go wrong. Whatever breakout group you are in, there are interesting people and nice people.
Yeah, we are interesting persons. I hope we don't turn out to be persons of interest.
Not persons of the internet, persons of...
Okay, you are on Netflix then. Watch. That's a good one.
I think what's so nice about the breakouts is that it's Luis does all the work. We don't have to do any work. So
Yes.
welcome back, everyone.
He's like...
We are very near the end of our meeting. I have just asked Shangatai if he can, because I think you are tired of my voice and I am tired of my voice. So Shangatai, if
no,
you
I'm not yet, sorry. You
yes.
have a wonderful way of speaking English. I always told you that. So please keep talking.
I'm not going to comment on that, but thank you, Carlos. I think we just really need to summarize what we've achieved, and then we can have a little bit of general discussion about next steps. It seems that, from what I can gather from this morning, we've got consensus on these 7 main sessions. There's still work to be done on what goes into those main sessions, what they focus on, and that will be done by the volunteer groups. We're going to look at the guidelines that were developed last year for main sessions. We'll review them and adopt them with changes if necessary. Timing of the main sessions, it seems that there's a concern about not making them too long, but they also can't be too short. In my breakout group, we felt that 90 minutes was a good period, but I think we can come back to that. But we've got consensus, and I think most people seem to feel excited about these 7 main sessions. We've also got agreed that coming out of this meeting, we need groups, volunteer groups that will work on organizing the main sessions, and we'll need groups that will organize the introductory and concluding sessions. We've got proposals on the table for how to deal with the newcomers session. So if we have any more time, perhaps we can discuss that. So I think we've basically concluded our work at this point with regard to the main sessions. There's a lot of work ahead, particularly if we follow the guidelines in terms of preparing the input papers, but that's what we'll do in the coming weeks. Can we close on this main session discussion? Does anybody feel we need to do anything more? The next step, Shangatai, do you want to just reiterate what you think the next steps will be, and perhaps explain to all the MAG members how the Secretariat will go about convening these voluntary working groups to organize the main sessions, and then the second set of groups to work on preparing the introductory and concluding sessions.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here, so I won't switch on my camera. Yes, okay, great. So for the, I'll start off with what you suggested, convening the two groupings. So I think the best way of doing it is just to set up a Google Doc, which the MAG can come in and just add their names to which group they want to be in. And then we can see whether or not we have a balanced groupings, because of course we don't want to have one group with 2 people and another group with 20 people. So that will be done after this meeting. If not today, definitely by Monday, and we'll send that out to you. We have also said that we are going to have another virtual MAG meeting. This is just to follow up, not next week, but the week after next, and that's going to be on Tuesday. And as far as the timeline goes, I don't know, Lewis, if you can put up the timeline document. Yes, we've made changes to the timeline. So at the moment, we are here at the second open consultations and MAG meetings, that 15th to 19th of June. That's where we are. And then, so after this, and I think according to the agenda items, we have completed the first selection of the workshops, and we have had a review of the IGF 2020. We did not review the day 0 sessions, so that's fine. And then we did have the discussion of the main sessions. So the next thing that we are going to do is this vetting process. So the Secretariat is going to contact the session organizers and ask them to resubmit their accepted session proposals with a plan on how to hold it online. We will consult with the workshop evaluation group just to make sure that we have all the elements there that they think is pertinent, that it will be required. So hopefully we could send that out by, this is hopeful if everything goes according to plan, by the 24th of June, and just give them 2 weeks to submit. And then by the 8th of July, we will know which workshop organizers still want to hold a session, because as you know, when the workshop proposals were submitted, it was with the idea that they would have a face-to-face meeting. And this is also goes with the open forums and the village booths. So basically everything. So we're going to ask all the session organizers if they still want to hold their sessions virtually. And then we suppose that not everybody will, and we'll have a reduction then of those sessions. And then after the 8th of July, we propose that we will have another virtual meeting, a MAG call on Tuesday, 14th of July, and that's at 11 UTC, and that's the 301. I think the originator of the idea was Jennifer, and we will discuss the results of this second vetting process and come to the final decision of the final selection of the workshops and the sessions. And then we can try and see how we're going to arrange them into a good virtual program. So between then and now, of course, we are still going to continue to collect the ideas and have the discussion on the virtual IGF, and we can do this through the mailing list, have a document that collects all the good ideas, and also with our next virtual call, which we're going to have in 2 weeks' time. we can also touch upon that. So those are the next steps so far. And of course, these the thematic working groups and the main session working groups are going to continue to work in their groups that have been set up. And I think that's it. I must be forgetting something, but I'm sure, Henriette, you'll fill that in. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Shangatai. So our next milestone, in fact, is by 24 June to send out the announcement to the provisionally accepted session proposers and to invite them to resubmit with an explanation of how they will organize virtually. And then I'm just making a note here. So I know there are people in the floor, so I'm just going to summarize what the work is that the MAG has to do in the short and medium term. We need to look, number one, so Secretariat, please, if you can just try to take note of this. We need to review the guidelines for main sessions from 2019. Secondly, we need to come up with criteria for the vetting of session proposers when we ask them to resubmit. So we need to have a little bit of a plan. As you said, the workshop evaluation group can do this. If they're willing to, they can speak for themselves, or we can all work on it, or we can have volunteers. Thirdly, we need to convene the main session organizing groups. And fourthly, we need to convene the working groups to do the introductory and concluding sessions. And then fifthly, that's just really a task that we'll undertake. What the Secretariat can do is to summarize all the suggestions that have been received for a virtual IGF, all the design and planning suggestions, those that are going on in the MAG mailing list, as well as those that emerged from the MAG meeting. Open consultation, but also from your breakout groups. You touched on suggestions for a virtual IGF. We'll summarize all of that and then try and compile that into some options for you to look at, so that when we have our next call, we actually give you some design options to consider, so that we can make sooner rather than later a decision about whether we're having a 2-week-long IGF or a 1-month IGF, or, etc. So that's really where I see us at the moment in terms of what needs to be done. And thanks very much for updating the timeline. Now I'm opening the floor. Nebosha, you are first.
Okay, thank you. I have one remark, let's say. I don't think that we agree that 7 is the final number of main session, but just that these 7 are those that we agreed, but if we feel that it's necessary, that number can be expanded, it can be enlarged. And the second thing is one question which just now, as I saw this document, 2020 timeline, what about symbolism, heraldics of this year's IGF? Are we going to use Polish hosts? Is that in a way going to be changed? Or I mean, it's a formal but still a very important question, how we are going to in that sense present this year's IGF. I believe there should be some kind of reference to current situation and the fact that this is the very first virtual IGF. If nothing else, I would add a small V in front of this IGF 2020 that looks so nice on this.
It's a good point, Nebosha, and also main theme, because I'm assuming that Poland wants to keep Internet united for 2021. So we might want to come up with some branding and also a main theme. So thanks.
When it comes to the main theme, Internet United, since such nice for this year, having on mind all this complex situation that we have. So it says if Polish hosts agree, I wouldn't change it. I think it really paints a picture of this year's situation. So thank you.
The Polish government has said that we can use the logo that they have designed because it is for IGF 2020. I mean, as you can see, it takes the round for the 0, so it's 2020. So
That's
they
right.
have graciously allowed us to use that. We've just quickly just removed Poland, but we can do, put a V or do something that makes sure that it emphasizes the digital nature of it. There will be,
I would suggest that we just put a small V in front of IGF and we'll keep this as a logo for this year's IGF.
Sure.
Thanks, Nabosha. Those are great ideas. And thanks for flagging that particular issue of branding and identity. Sylvia.
Thank you, Henriette. Well, thanks, Nabosha, for your comment. I think it is very relevant. And I am happy to help with the modification of the design. If I can get the final files, I can add it for you the same way I did the postcards a couple of years ago. When with the comment that I wanted to make was that I think it would be best to include some basic information for the proposers about what it is or what it means to host or organize their sessions online. I don't think that they can go blindly to say, yes, we are good to go without knowing what that actually means. So I think it might be, although I understand that you, Henriette, you want to collect input and have an idea of how to incorporate all of these innovations and all of this. I think that it is going to be quite hard to just raise your hand and say, yes, I'm going to do an online session that I have no idea what tool it is, at what time it's going to happen. So it's just too many unknowns for proposers to confirm straight away. So I would really, I mentioned it on the small group, the breakout group that we just had, that honestly, I feel that it would be really good that the Secretariat shares with us some of the progress that you guys have done in regards to virtual event planning. What are the resources that are available? And I think it would be more productive use of the MAC time to work on top of that, what it is that we can do with what you guys have and the resources that you have been able to pull together, rather than just throwing ideas that might derail the whole conversation and not happen, right? So I don't think that that's a good use of our time, although I understand it's good to discuss and how to be creative. You can be creative with a cake, but you still know that you have to have the eggs and the flour and the milk, right? So that's what's my comment. Thanks.
And thanks, Sylvia. That is why we will give you some proposals. I just want to clarify something about the session vetting process. In fact, looking at the timeline, when we discussed it with the Secretariat, I think the vetting that we can do quickly is to ask the open forum and day 0 proposers if they want to continue or not. I agree with you, actually, Sylvia. We can't rush the vetting of the workshops. So, Shagata, I think we might want to segment this sessions vetting process into 2 parts. One where we ask the non-workshop sessions if they want to go ahead, just so that we have an idea of numbers. And then we can look at what we want how we want to go about doing the second round of vetting, what method we want to use and what criteria, and also how much we tell people when we ask them to resubmit. So I agree with you, Sylvia. I don't think we can rush that. So it's possible that that 8 July timeline might need to be adjusted.
Yeah.
So,
now, we were going to go through the working group on workshop evaluations.
But they haven't yet agreed to
yes,
whether they're
if they
willing
agree,
to take this
else
on.
we do it to the whole.
So let's give them
yeah.
a chance. I don't want to put them on the spot now. They can talk amongst one another. And if they can come back to us next week on whether they're willing to take this on, or if they would like us to convene a new group to help with this. So those are important points. Thanks, Sylvia. Tamaya.
Thank you, Henriette. Sylvia has said most of what I wanted to say, so I just will be brief, but bring in one element that that I really want to underline here from what she said, is the fact that when we go to the organizers, be that for the workshops or for the other sessions, we give them a bit of a detail of what it means to organize a session online. And I know some of them might have really good experience with that, some might not, and we just need to outline what that means, and also what is it that we as the IGF, the Secretariat, or the MAG can offer them in support. What does it mean to have technical, what is the technical platform we are going to use? I mean, I'm assuming it's Zoom, but that needs to be communicated. Will they have moderators already? Will they have technical support on hand? Will they have backgrounds? Will they need to have, will they have time to get together with their speakers and be able to just check connections and see if things are working? Who will be the rapporteur? If, all those things. I think we just need to have a quick think before we go to them and say, oh, do you want to do this? Because I assume that everybody will say, sure, of course I want to be on the program. But I think we just need to be sure that they understand what this means, and that they know, they don't assume also what is given to them if we are not able to give that. Thank you.
Completely agree. Very important. Paul, you are next.
Thank you, Henriette. I just wanted to underline the value of lessons learned from other organizations, and I was just wondering if through the Secretariat or other MAG members, if there's an effort to look at what other organizations within the UN and outside the UN have done in terms of holding virtual meetings, because there are a number of examples. I'm thinking, for example, of ICANN, which had their March meeting as a virtual meeting and will have their summer meeting as well. I think that the experience of other organizations could offer us a lot of lessons of things to do or things not to do in terms of pretty much everything: scheduling, time zones, length of sessions, maybe even what sort of criteria to put for organizers of sessions to ensure that they can put on a good virtual session. So it's just to express the hope that we have the means to, I don't know, canvass these or other organizations, or we're in touch with them about their experiences, and we can draw on that as we put together the virtual program.
Yes.
Paul, thanks very much for mentioning that. And in fact, Secretariat, let's add to our list of follow-up actions. Paul, we are already doing that. So we are in touch with these organizations. And if the MAG wants, we could actually invite some of them to address the MAG. Because I think you're really right. It will make a big difference. And I think it could be good to hear them talk about, to ask RightsCon, ask ICANN, ask CSTD to share some of their experiences. So very
Yes,
good suggestion, and I think we'll follow up, and possibly we can invite them to a MAG call to give us input.
Yeah, can I just add that, yes, we have spoken to ICANN, for instance, CSTD definitely, and other UNCTAD processes, and we've spoken to Diplo amongst others. So, and we are going to continue to talk to them and to other institutions. But as Henriette says, yeah, sure.
Yeah, we have a call scheduled with RightsCon for next week. And then we can also get feedback from the Internet and Jurisdiction Project. I mean, I think this is a very, very useful thing to get their input. And MAG members, if you have, I know Sylvia, you've sent some experiences. Other MAG members, if you've been in events that you felt were really well managed, then let us know. Next, Amado, you have the floor.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Well, my recommendation, Henriette, Chengetay, is, of course, the people from ICANN. I think they have a certain level of skills in terms of managing technology, and that's why I would like to suggest to the MAC, if it would be possible, to ask the participants of the workshops to pre-record their content with 1 month in advance, in which we can give them the proper technical support, let's say 4 workshops every day, and they can upload the results of their discussion. And during the IGF, we can have actually just a summary of what they already discussed during the workshop, and everybody can go to address the original material, and maybe we can also invite the open audience to attend these recording sessions in order for them to learn what the participants are trying to do. But I think it is very important to reduce the level of complexity in dealing with civil society, people who are not really skilled, who have some issues with the power like today, or with the connectivity and so on. And I think that will diminish the quality of the event, and we can, I think, prevent that if we pre-record it. And my suggestion is also that instead of having the whole load of workshops during the event, we just have panels of speakers representing each one of the workshops, reporting to the audience what happened in a format of a 15, 12 minutes participations. And then we can have in 4 days the whole summary, executive summary of the final discussions. And we can also intercalate these main sessions that we were discussing today about. And through this, maybe we can improve the probability of a successful event, decrease the amount of technical work, because as Tamia was mentioned, it's really complicated. I have been involved in several global events. It's really complicated, all those technical issues. And if we can see a way how to less the complexity and improve the quality, and also allow everybody to participate in a reasonable way, I think we can have a successful meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Amado. And please share, I think you've already, but also share those suggestions on the mailing list so that we can capture them from there as well.
I will.
Ben, sorry, Amado, did you want to respond?
Yes, no, I will. Thank you.
Please,
I will.
please, thanks very much. Ben, do you have
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, Ben Wallace for the transcript. It's a question about next steps. And obviously we understand there's a division of labor with the MAG responsible for deciding which workshops should be approved and for working on most of the main sessions, and the Secretariat dealing with the open forums and the day 0 sessions. And I know there's slightly different approaches as well for day zero. It states on the website that they're allocated on a first come, first served basis, and that takes into account space, relevance, regional and stakeholder balance. So I wondered what process the Secretariat's taking with the open forums and the day zero proposals. Are they also going to be asked to resubmit with a confirmation that they'll go virtual? And are you expecting final decisions for day zeros and open forums in the same time frame, which is, I think, this kind of the MAG meeting we'll have on the 14th of July? So I'm just curious to understand a bit more about how those two strands of the program are looking. Thanks.
Ben, I can only answer part of that, and that is that we will do two things. First, we'll ask them, do they still want to be considered in the light of the fact that it's a virtual IGF? And then once we know who still want to be considered, then we will also, as we are doing with other sessions, ask them to provide an explanation of how they would go about running it. So that we'll do once we have a sense of what the criteria is that the MAG would like us to apply to the second vetting process. So we won't rush that, but we feel that what we want to do sooner rather than later is just to give them the opportunity to withdraw their requests in the light of the fact that it's a virtual IGF. So I can't answer that whole question at this point, but we will be able to at least give you a confirmation of the numbers and how those have changed as a result of it being a virtual IGF.
Thank you.
And I think that from the point of view, even though those aren't organized by the MAG, I think we still want to make sure that they're successful sessions and that they are organized and implemented and designed with the nature of the virtual medium taken into account. So I think we also do want them to resubmit their methodology at the very least. Next, we have Roberto Zambrana.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a quick response to your comment. I think about the vetting process, I think we can ask the group. I will write a mail very soon. So my first feeling is that we will not have problems with conducting that the vetting process. Of course, following what the Secretariat criteria are. That will be all. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberto. Veni.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Just
Great.
introduce yourself.
Yeah, Veni Markowski, ICANN MAG member. I just, because you mentioned several times the meetings that ICANN organized, I just wanted to drive your attention to the fact that next week actually is the ICANN Kuala Lumpur meeting. And I call it Kuala Lumpur, but it will be virtual. However, we'll be using the Kuala Lumpur time zone. So it might be useful for the MAG members to just join, and I'll put a link in the chat room in a bit, and just see how it goes, because it will be fully virtual with interpretation, multiple sessions, etc., etc. So it might be helpful when you're discussing what to do and how to do it.
Thanks very much, Veni, and thanks for ICANN's willingness to be so supportive. We've already been in touch with ICANN staff, and they've really been very helpful. And thanks, of course, for the support for the captioning. I really do urge MAG members, if you haven't had a chance to participate in a big virtual event, next week's ICANN meeting is a very, very good opportunity for us. I see that the floor is closed, or not closed, but I don't see anyone in the queue. So Secretariat, if you can just take us back to our agenda. My sense is that we've come to the end of the meeting. Are there any other matters that any MAG member would like to put on the table at this point? I see no hands, and I see nothing in the chat. So I think we can close our meeting. We've prepared a little evaluation for you, which Louise will put up. So maybe now's the time to do that, and then we can fill in the poll and then come back and we'll formally close the meeting. Min, if you are still with us, I would really like you to make some closing remarks, and Shengatai, you as well. But let's fill in our poll now.
Yes, may I speak?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, I was following what Veni said about the ICANN meeting, which will be, of course, very interesting. And it will be interesting to see a meeting in a very large meeting with a lot of participants, a lot of sessions, etc. But in which the multi-regional element is not dominant. There is, the ICANN sessions do not require that there is multi-regional participation in their diversity criteria, not even multi-sectoral. They're flexible on that. So despite this, it will be very interesting to follow the technology used, the way they use the monitoring, the quality of the operation, etc. Will be interesting. But these elements have to be taken into account.
Thanks a lot for that, Sarah. I would like to, Louise, thanks very much. You can end that one. And if you could then just put the poll up about the general feedback on the meeting, the one that we did previously, that just assesses whether people are positive or negative, how they felt about the overall meeting. So this is very useful. I'm just going to go through the word. Louise, are you there?
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
I'm here. I'm here.
Hello. This is Rudolf. Hello. Does anybody hear me?
Rudolf, go ahead. You want to speak?
Oh, sorry. For 10 minutes I'm trying to connect. I'm sorry that I only voice my now. I wanted just to because we were at day 0. Sorry, that was the moment where I wanted to intervene. Because we had last year on day 0 this high-level meeting with ministers and CEOs and representatives of all stakeholders. Just to be clear, because I had a request from my minister's office that this year there will be no such meeting on day 0. No virtual high-level or whatever parliamentarians or so forth meeting. Just to make it clear.
Thanks for that, Rudolf. I think I caught that. If I understood that correctly, yes, it will be very different this year. Shengatai, can you respond to that?
Yes, I think we will have to look at day 0 a little bit differently. Do we want to, if the question is there going to be a parliamentary session as such within the IGF meeting? Yes, I still think that there will be one. It may not necessarily be on the day 0, but we will try and incorporate it with the high-level sessions because we still intend to have high-level sessions.
What do you mean by high-level sessions?
High-level sessions as we like ministerial or high-level leaders sessions that we've had in the past IGF meetings.
Okay, it's also that's on the agenda, but you don't know when, and because I need to block some date. I mean, everybody probably needs to block the dates, so we need to be quite quick about the possible date.
Yes, exactly. But everything hangs in balance. And how long will the IGF be? If the IGF is still in the 1 week period, then of course it's different. If the IGF is going to be held over, a month period, so that has to be settled first. Is what's the length of the IGF, and then we can see where we are going to be inserting the high-level sessions.
And host of such a high-level leaders meeting will be somebody from the UN.
Yes, it's going to be the UN. It's going to be basically the UN Secretariat. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for prolonging this, but sorry.
No, that's fine, as long as it's clear. Yeah.
Can you announce in any way when the decision will be made, whether it's a 1 week IGF or a 2 week or 3 weeks or whatsoever? Just because, as Rudolf said, it's very necessary to block early these days in your schedule.
As the Secretariat, we are waiting for the advice of the MAG. Okay. What advice do you give? What length it is?
Okay.
And then we'll take it from there.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could do a poll.
Everyone, please, can I chair the meeting? Let me just reiterate, and then you can ask questions. So what I proposed is that we will summarize all the suggestions that you've made about design. We'll do that by the time our next MAG call takes place. And then when we do that next MAG call, we want to give you very concrete options so that at that call, and Shangatai will tell us what the date is, that you then decide whether this is a 2 week IGF or a 3 day or a 4 day IGF. So Shangatai is correct. The MAG still needs to decide. You are still responsible for the overall design of the meeting. What we want to do is try and make it easier for you to decide by summarizing all the suggestions that are being made and then putting them in the form of options for you to consider. So I'm hoping, Jutta, in response to your question and Rudolf's question, that within 2 weeks, we can publicize dates and data about how long and how this IGF will take place. I think, Shangatai, you might correct me if you think I'm being over ambitious, but I'm hoping that we can make the decision within 2 weeks. Would that, Jutta, Rudolf, would that work if we make this decision within 2 weeks?
If I may skip in, I do think that also for the decision that the workshop proposers need to take, whether they will be able to run a virtual session at a virtual IGF, they might probably ask whether it will be in that week that was suggested to be in Katowice, or whether it's expanded before that time or afterwards. So I do think it's really necessary to come to a decision as soon as possible, also to enable the workshop proposers to take their own decision whether they accept their proposal and feel up to run it during a virtual session. Some people might just have made plans for the week before or the week after the traditional IGF would have taken place.
I agree. We need to make it really soon. But, Shangatai and I discussed this, and we think that many of you will be involved in the ICANN meeting next week. So we didn't want to force this decision to be made next week, which would have been nice. We'd rather give you all the experience and the time to participate in that meeting, those of you that do. I know not everyone does. And then we'll make the decision in the week after that. Jutta, I would like to make it sooner, but I don't think it's realistic for us to make it any earlier than that.
I have one comment. I think we would have to discuss at our next meeting for a little while if we really want to do this high-level segment virtually. I am not so convinced if it really makes sense, because the merit of this kind of high-level section was more than in other formats of the IGF, the physical presence, the getting together, the mingling. So I really don't know if it really makes sense to have this. I would rather prefer to mainstream these high-level people into the actual program and try to allocate slots for parliamentarians, high-level people from ministerial or CEOs or whatever, to the actual workshops or main sessions, rather than having a dedicated session. But I know that's not a discussion that we can have now, but I just wanted to flag that I think we need to discuss this.
I agree with you, Rudolph, and I think, look, where Min can say more in his closing remarks about that, and I know there is planning for a UN-led high-level session, but I agree with you, we need to look at it and how it would impact on the rest of the program. So I think the other important thing, so thanks for tabling this here, and I know this is putting pressure on UNDESA, but I do think that when the MAG has our next call, we would need to be able to look at a proposal for how the high-level sessions are intended to work, to be able to understand in what way that's going to impact on the design of the IGF. So it can become quite complex. So I do think we need to be able to have a clearer understanding of that. But I think, Min, when you make your closing remarks, if you can say, I know you spoke about this earlier this week, but it might be good for you to just refresh everyone's understanding of what your plans are for the high-level sessions at this point. So anyone else who want to take the floor at this point? It's we don't have these meetings too often, so now is a good time. Shanghai, can you in the meantime remind us when our next call will be?
Madam Chair, I would like to share information with you.
Please go ahead. Is that Atumani speaking?
No, this is Mr. Eric.
Oh, Eric, please go ahead.
I don't know if I can
introduce yourself for the record.
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak in French.
Eric, I'm afraid we don't have interpretation on hand. If you're going to be very brief, you can speak.
Yeah, very brief. It's very good
and
information.
Someone else can translate for you. You have to keep it really very brief.
Yes. OK. Donc, je voulais dire, pendant que nous tenions cette réunion du MAG, nous, au Congo-Brazzaville, on a organisé la deuxième édition du IGF national qui a commencé depuis hier et ça s'est terminé aujourd'hui. Donc, c'est pour ça que vous ne m'avez pas vu hier en réunion parce que j'étais panéliste là-bas. Mais l'information que je voulais vous partager ici, c'est que pour la première fois dans notre IGF national,
si vous voulez poser un peu, on pourrait traduire la première partie et puis faire en pièces. It's Ben for the record. I'm happy to have a go. So Eric was saying he's been working on the Congo National IGF all week, which is why you haven't seen as much of him during the discussions. And then he was about to say something about the discussions this week. Eric, encore?
Voilà, donc pour une première fois, pendant notre IGF, on a eu beaucoup de membres du gouvernement qui ont participé aux sessions.
So for the first time, they managed to get lots of government participants in the national IGF.
Et nous avons eu beaucoup de parlementaires, beaucoup de VIP, même les membres de la Cour suprême ont participé aux sessions.
And even lots of members of parliament and lots of VIPs in the high-level session, I think.
Et maintenant, ils ont mesuré, ils ont touché du doigt, ils ont compris la puissance de l'Internet.
And now those high-level speakers have understood the power of the Internet.
Et je sais que beaucoup de pays africains sont dans la même situation que nous, parce que cette situation a permis à notre pays de faire passer toutes les lois au niveau du Parlement, les lois sur la cybersécurité, la cybercriminalité, les transactions électroniques et la protection des données à caractère personnel. Toutes ces lois ont été promulguées grâce à la participation à ce forum-là de tous ces leaders.
Encore une fois, Eric, je suis désolé.
No,
it was possible for them. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, somebody else.
No, I was trying to help also. This is Maria Paz. Yeah, they say that this situation provides them the opportunity to pass all the legislation related with cybersecurity, cybercrime, data protection, so all the relevant issues that are connected with the internet.
Voilà, donc toutes ces lois ont été votées grâce à cette situation-là du pandémie du Covid-19. Donc, ça a permis aux leaders de comprendre la puissance de l'Internet et de voter toutes ces lois-là.
And so all the laws have been voted.
Yeah.
Maria Paz.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually, can I ask? We have several French speakers in our meeting. So if I can ask Lucien or Adama, or if there's anyone else.
I think it's basically that all the laws regarding this issue that he mentioned are being voted and approved right now.
Voilà, parce qu'on a eu cette situation. Et donc, en fait, l'expérience que je voulais partager ici, c'est pour beaucoup de pays africains. Parce que je sais que dans beaucoup de pays africains, on a du mal à faire passer les lois. Ce qui fait qu'on a du mal à adhérer à la Convention de Budapest et à la Convention de l'Union africaine parce que les lois ne sont pas votées au Parlement.
Thanks. Maria Paz, you go.
I'm sorry, it was a little fast for me. I don't know if Lucien can come to the rescue.
Okay, Lucien.
Yeah, I'm outside, so I cannot vote. He said that there's a number of laws that in Africa are not voted fast enough, and IGF and having a direct link to the IPs basically allows for such advanced voting, and it allows also to go for signing the Budapest Convention and other texts at the regional level.
Thanks, Lucien.
Donc,
Eric.
pour terminer, je voulais ici inviter tous les pays qui, évidemment, ont eu le même problème que le Congo pour faire passer les lois, de profiter pendant cette période de crise, de pandémie, pour montrer au niveau du gouvernement l'importance de faire passer toutes les lois qui traînent encore sur les bureaux.
So he's saying that he invites all the countries to make an opportunity of this emergency situation and make the governments aware of the relevance of passing all these laws.
Parce que nous, aujourd'hui, nous avons notre cyberlégislation déjà CENI, donc, et c'est grâce à cette crise que nous avons eu de pandémie de Covid-19 qui a accéléré évidemment l'adoption de toutes les lois au niveau du Parlement. Donc voilà ce que je voulais partager avec vous comme expérience.
So he's saying that this crisis of this pandemic has provided this opportunity, this unique opportunity to get these laws passed and have this conversation. And this is what he wants to share today with us. Thank you.
Voilà.
Thanks very much, Maria Paz, and thanks very much, Eric. You know, Eric is a new MAG member, and Eric has had a difficult, I've been in touch with Eric, and Eric has had a very challenging year. So Eric, thanks very much for participating in the meeting. And I think Eric's point speaks directly to this issue of high-level sessions. Yes, it will be complex to organize high-level sessions, but at the same time, there is an opportunity here that's generated as a result of the pandemic, that governments who normally might not be that engaged are now engaged. So I think this is definitely something that needs to be considered. I see there's an observer, or who's in the, there's someone else in the speaking queue. Atumani, do you want to take the floor?
Yes, of course, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity that you gave me to intervene this time. And I'd like to also to thank all of colleagues, as it's not easy for newcomers to be really involved on the works. But most of colleagues pay attention and can share experiences, and it's something really valuable and really appreciated. So I'd like to add another point in the documentation of our processes, because we have a lot of things that's usually used, but in my own opinion, it's quite difficult to find in terms of processes well documented. And I'd like to volunteer if we can work with others. For example, for newcomer, we might take 1 year and plus to be really involved if we'd like to really follow what is done. to learn and to be really embarked on what others are doing. And I'd like to apologize for the in the process of workshop evaluation, the final step during a couple of days, because I could not really be involved because honestly I was a little bit lost on the process. This is my final comments on the last couple of days, and thank you all, and thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks, Karim. I see now it's you. Thanks very much for those comments, Karim. And thanks for volunteering also for helping with that. So we are now going to close our meeting. No one else is jumping in. Thanks, Louise, for bringing that poll up. I think the feedback on this MAG meeting, I think this was feedback on this virtual MAG meeting, is really largely positive. And so just thanks to all of you. I think the fact that you were willing to do this extraordinary thing of getting up early, staying up late, having working groups work in different times. And I think the other thing that has made this meeting a success is that you have prepared so well. The working groups worked very well. I know not every working group had as many people as others, and of course there's some people who weren't as active as others. But others stepped in and showed leadership. So thanks really very, very much for that. I think something that some MAG members have brought to my attention, which I think it's important for us to consider, is that this MAG is quite unique in the sense that there are so few new MAG members. So thank you to the old MAG members for supporting the new MAG members, but also just a reminder to the older MAG members who've been here for a while, when we go forward as we prepare IGF 2020, is to be sensitive to the fact that there are different languages, different levels of experience, and that we are still one MAG, even though some of us have been here for 3 years and some of them are still very new. Some of us are still new. So I think you are managing that well, continue to manage it well, and just manage it with generosity and sensitivity and hard work. So I want to give Wai Min Kwok from UNDESA an opportunity to say something, and then also Shangatai, and then I'll give my final thank you to everyone. Wai Min.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Henriette. This is Wai Min Kwok from UNDESA. I'm not actually going to give like closing remarks, more like my personal comments or observation. First, I'd like to just echo what Henriette just said, to congratulate the MAG. I think it's a highly productive meeting, but that's not possible without very passionate and committed efforts of the MAG member, and also the very effective chairing of Henriette as the MAG chair. I enjoyed listening. I was in and out other meetings, but the way how the breakout groups discuss, come back together with very, very clear and concise recommendations, like for the main sessions, I think this is actually very good. One observation, like I see now that we still have 67 participants online, majority the MAG members. Changatai can correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is like one of the highest number even for the last day of a MAG meeting compared to a physical meeting. So I would say that this virtual meeting is equally, if not more productive than a physical meeting. And I hope that we can actually see this positive outcome reflected in the upcoming annual meeting, the virtual meeting in November. Also on the point that is discussed in the last 30 minutes or so about the high-level sessions, I think we have to act very fast. Together with Changatai, we will see how we can actually come up with the structure that's taking into consideration all the comments made. The question whether we have a day zero, how we can look at the synthesis of the high-level session. High-level sessions, if I may, just to respond to Henriette's comment to elaborate more. if we just to recall the high-level sessions that we have in Berlin, that include the ministerial breakfast, then there's the high-level leaders track, and the opening session, the official opening, then the parliamentary session, and the closing session. So these are the high-level sessions, and in some form, in the past IGF meetings. So this will remain, but the purpose is, of course, how we can get this to be integrated to the full program. To Rudolph's comment, I'm certainly all for getting a senior or high-level participant in the main session. I think that we can see that in the past main sessions, those that have high-level participants normally are also more well attended. Henriette mentioned that we have this plan to be announced in 2 weeks' time. I think that is the most ideal. We will aim for that. If not, will certainly be by end of July. I think we have to send out the message to all the digital ministers, to all the high-level participants, including the heads of agencies, head of UN agencies, intergovernmental and non-intergovernmental organizations that include heads of civil society, the CEO of industry. So all that should actually be done well before the summer break of all those countries in the northern hemisphere. I would like to just to end here again. I would like to congratulate the MAC and the MAC chair. I think this is I look forward to see the report, and I'm sure our director Zhu Wangju and Mr. Liu, the USG, will look forward to see the report. One comment I forget. There was a request about to see the notes from the USG to the Secretary General. The USG has not forgotten about this, just that is the internal notes. So he's actually preparing a letter addressed to the MAC that will have the same content as the notes, and that letter should come to the MAC very soon. Thank you, Andre. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Wai Min. And please convey our thanks to Mr. Liu for spending so much time with us during the second day of the open consultation. Shangatai.
Thank you, Henriette. I'll be very quick. I think the meeting went very, very, very well, and thanks to the chair, and also thanks to the MAG members and also members of the community. I think it was really interactive, and I think we're on good footing, at least for preparations for the virtual IGF. We did try a couple of new things, the polls and the breakout rooms, and I think those worked very well. So we're going to continue to improve on that, and we're also going to continue to listen to people who are holding their virtual meetings and try and incorporate the good things, and also watch out for the things that they say that we should watch out for. As for the next meeting, as next week is the ICANN meeting, we won't have the virtual meeting then, but the following week, that Tuesday, that's the 30th of June at 2000 hours UTC. That's when we plan to have the next MAG virtual meeting. The Secretariat will start immediately with the follow-up actions, and we'll see you then. Thank you, and have a good weekend.
Thanks very much, Shangatai. And to the Secretariat, a massive thank you. They've really worked very hard. So to Lima and Anya and Luis and Shangatai, to the consultants, to Wim and Sorina, and to Sam, thanks very much for all your work during and before the meeting. And thank you to the captioners. I really appreciate all the effort that the silent effort that they put into this. And again, to the facilitators and the rapporteurs and all the MAG members. And I want to give a very special thank you to Louise. You know, I think Louise has been navigating this so well and has been incredibly supportive. And I have felt very, as a chair, I have felt very supported by the Secretariat and very supported by Louise's technical presence and expertise. So thanks very much, everyone. And now let's give ourselves a very big applause. We can wave or we can clap, and then we can say goodbye to one another. So thanks very much.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye to the observers as well. I forgot to thank them.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Henriette. You've been on. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Stay safe.